My first handwriting tip is choose the right kind of pen for you. So it's not that there's a right and a wrong answer, but everybody's comfortable with different things, and using the kind of pen that you prefer might make your writing neater, and it will almost certainly make it easier for you. So if we start off with a biro like this, one of the variables is the kind of ink that you're using. So with a basic biro, you have to put in quite a lot of pressure to make a mark, which is more tiring and less comfortable, and that can also make your handwriting messier. For some people, something like a ballpoint pen is a little bit easier, so you don't have to make quite as much effort to write. Or even a fineliner like this, or a gel pen, the ink will flow really, really easily. So you have to put less pressure on, but then also that can smudge more easily, so you're kind of weighing it up. And that's one of the reasons why everybody prefers different things. Something like this is also nice because I like the material that it's made out of. I find it comfortable to hold, and especially if you've got sensory preferences, that makes a lot of difference. So there's things like this that have a card outer, which I feel I'm quite comfortable. You might not, again, it's very individual. These biros can also be quite uncomfortable because they're so thin. So you're actually having to do quite a lot of work with your fingers just to hold it before you've even made a mark, which can be uncomfortable for lots of people. They've also got a lot of kind of ridges around the outside. It's very hard plastic, and that can rub, especially if you've got an awkward pen grip. So for some people, having a flatter pen is easier. And you can buy sort of adapted pens from different suppliers online, but if you want something that doesn't look kind of too medical, you can just get a fun pen like this. So I think somebody bought me these from Paperchase or Smiggle. They're not too expensive. They don't look as if they are for a special reason, but they sit more easily in your hand. You don't have to press as hard. So for me, those are easier to write with. Some people prefer these kinds of ergonomic style pens, which lots of companies give out. So, you know, they're just kind of bent. So this bit here fits really nicely between your thumb and your finger, and then the bit that you're actually gripping with your fingers is really soft and rubbery. So my advice would be, in normal times, go to Paperchase, go to Smiggle, go to Smith's. Just try a few different things and see what you might like, and then take them home, practice with different things, and quite often you'll find that using something that you like makes it a lot easier. My second tip would be to pace yourself. So everybody, dyspraxic or not, will find that their handwriting gets messier over a longer period of time, so the longer you write for, the scrawlier it is. But for dyspraxics, you're probably working harder to make it neat in the first place, and your muscles are probably working harder to keep everything in the right position as well. So what that means is that you need to take regular breaks, and for some people that happens really intuitively, but for other people they won't remember to, and you'll write for a really long time and then find that you're knackered and your handwriting's illegible and you can't go for any longer. So in that case, it's probably worth thinking, okay, well, I noticed that after about 15 minutes my handwriting's starting to get messy, so actually I'm going to take a break after 10 and just take 60 seconds to stretch everything out and give myself a rest, and then I'll carry on. And usually if you do it that way, you can write for a little bit longer legibly, and it doesn't get as painful. You also have to remember that if you ask any part of your body to do the same thing for a long period of time, it will get stiff and achy. That's just natural. But we don't always think about that when we're handwriting. So if you think about doing this, your fingers, your wrist, your elbow, your shoulder are doing something really repetitive for a long time. So it's quite natural that they stiffen up, especially if you're dyspraxic and you're tensing all your muscles really hard just to get the work done. So yeah, make sure you take your breaks and maybe try and stretch out, so you can just do little stretches like this, which some people will do really naturally, or even just consciously get up, go and make yourself a snack, do something different with your hands so that you're not stuck in the same position for ages. Tip number 3 is a basic one, and that is that you are probably pressing too hard with your pen. A lot of people do that, but especially lots of dyspraxic people do it because you're not getting enough sensory feedback when you're writing. And lots of us will have noticed that we are squashing one of our felt tips, we're damaging the end of our ballpoint pens. Lots of us do it. So a straightforward way to tell if you're doing that is write something down, and if you look at the back of your piece of paper and you can see where you've been writing, or you can feel where you've been writing with your finger, you are definitely pressing too hard. Another thing you can do is take a mechanical pencil like this, so where you press the lead out, write on your piece of paper, and if the piece of pencil snaps while you're writing, then you're clearly pressing too hard. So ways that you can improve that are partly just by being aware of it, like check yourself every so often and think, okay, I'm definitely pressing too hard. Quite often when we're really focused, we end up pressing harder and harder and harder because we're thinking about what we're doing, but that's really tiring. So try and be aware of that. If you're really struggling to improve it, then just do a lot of writing with a mechanical pencil, and then it will snap when you press too hard, and you will train yourself quite quickly, a bit like those toothbrushes that fall in half when you push too hard. So that's my next tip. Tip number 4 is probably my favourite, and it's the one I think is the most useful in a practical sense. That is to abbreviate absolutely everything. So you are an adult, you are not in school anymore. So in a lot of personnel and a lot of professional context, it's okay not to write everything down perfectly. You can use initials, you can use a plus sign instead of an and, you can use an at sign instead of writing at, you can use an up arrow to mean improved or increased, you can use pictures, you can use happy faces, you can use whatever you need to use to get the information down quicker. And that's actually a really valuable tool once you get used to doing it. I'm not saying that you should do that on your nan's birthday card, but if you are writing lecture notes, if you are taking down directions, if you are taking down a phone message, it's just a way that you can get the information there quicker. And I think if you want to get the absolute most out of your handwriting, my tip is to make sure that you do the minimum of it that you absolutely have to, so that you can get all the information there. Tip number 5 is a really important one, and I want everybody to try and remember this. That is that you cannot hold yourself and other people cannot hold you to neurotypical standards about handwriting. You can try everything that I've suggested, you can pace yourself, you can practice, you can use the right pen for you, and that's great, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll ever be able to write as quickly or as legibly as the person next to you, and that's okay. If that's the standard that you're trying to live up to, you're going to spend a lot of time feeling disappointed and frustrated, and that is not fair. Advocating for yourself in that way could mean that if you've got a relative who's always really mean about your birthday card, you could just say, actually, adjust your expectations a little bit. If you work somewhere where there's a lot of written demands and there's a lot of stuff that you need to write down and you're struggling to keep up, you can say, actually, there are things that could be dictated, there are things that could be typed and printed and then filed, and you could just save your handwriting for the jobs where there's absolutely no other way that you could do it. Sometimes you might struggle to get an employer to budge on that, and in that case, Access to Work are really useful people to get in touch with, and you can Google that. They can look at your workplace and say, actually, this is what's reasonable, this is what could be changed here, and they can really advocate on your behalf. So that's a really useful resource to be aware of. If you are a student and you have a diagnosis, you're entitled to apply for Disabled Students Allowance, and that can sometimes provide grants for assistive technology, but it can just make recommendations that are really useful. So that could be to use a laptop or a dictaphone in your lectures, that could be to get your seminar notes sent over in advance, so that you're not having to copy them down while somebody's speaking. And what that means is that when someone's addressing you in an educational context, you can be 100% concentrating on what's going on and not trying to write it down and do 10 things at once, because that's actually really hard for us and it can put you at a disadvantage in education. So I think on the whole, don't avoid handwriting completely, but there are lots of ways that you can make life easier for yourself by only doing it in certain contexts when you really have to. Your dyspraxia is valid, handwriting can be really hard for us, so know what your rights are and advocate for them.